You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 28, The Butterfly Ball, Part 1, The Musicians. And coming to you from the actually quite warm suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from Rhode Island, John Halloween Matola. I know that it's, by the time this comes out, it won't be Halloween anymore, but we're a week away from Halloween now.
It'll be fresh in everyone's mind. Halloween will have been a few days before.
And did you know that the first jack-o'-lanterns were actually made from turnips?
I thought you were going to say we're made in Rhode Island.
No Rhode Island facts tonight.
Were they large turnips or small jack-o'-lanterns?
I think they were just regular turnips. I saw a picture of one once and it looked freaking horrifying.
Scarier than a regular jack-o'-lantern?
Yeah. But I think somewhere along the way, somebody looked at a pumpkin and probably said, that's more appropriately sized. Let's carve that shit up, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure you'd have to get out some fine, like, X-Acto knives or something to do a turnip.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that video of on YouTube? It's like the guy that he takes vegetables, he carves them into ocarinas and then plays them.
No.
So he just like takes like a large carrot and he carves it and he plays like a song on it.
Now I have to look that up.
It's pretty impressive. And he has hundreds of videos of him doing this.
Wow.
Just plays them for a few minutes and then just lets them rot or cooks them. I don't know what he does with them after that. I never watched past that. All right. So if you want to stay up to date on the show and get all this great information, please make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcatcher. You can also subscribe on YouTube. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Links to all that are deeppurplepodcast.com. If you like what you're hearing, you get some joy out of this, it gives you some entertainment on your commute, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And then to help new people discover the show, why don't you check us out and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So before we get started, I'd like to thank our patrons, speaking of Patreon, Clay Wambacher and Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsAstage.net, $5 tier, Peter Gardeau at the $3 tier, Els Murders and Spacey Noodles coming in at the $1 tier. Thanks to all of our friends at the Deep Dive Podcast Network, Riot, Sabbath, Bloody Podcast, The Simple Man at Skinner Reconsidered, and Terry T-Bone Mathley, the godfather of the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Then also our patron saint and archivist, Jorg Planer. Thank you very much for all that you do for the show. All right, so how's your week been, my friend?
Pretty good. Good.
Any comments now that you're an active Twitterer? Any comments from social media?
I don't get too much. I only have what if I had it like maybe 2 weeks now? I think I have 20 followers.
Oh, it's doubled since the last episode.
Yeah, maybe it'll get more. But I'm not on a whole lot, but I am on a way more than like, the every 5 years that I was before. But I usually I'll usually like and comment on all the different stuff that like the posts that a lot of the people put up that you mentioned, like the podcast we listen to, like Sabbath Bloody Podcast or Pot of Thunder, or like some of the other ones that we follow. I'll like, retweet, and sometimes like we'll like each other's comments and stuff like that. So it's been pretty cool. It's usually me like talking, like agreeing and loving songs that they shout out and stuff. So it's usually deep cut stuff, like, which is awesome because it's just kind of cool. It's like having a bunch of people around like you and me that are talking about stuff that nobody else knows about, because I've curated it to be
Exactly,
just about just with like podcasts and people rockers and stuff that only love that kind of stuff. So no white noise in there. It's kind of cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Got an interesting email from a gentleman named Steve. He emailed me yesterday afternoon. He said he heard us talking about the Concerto 99 shows at the Royal Albert Hall in 1999. He said he was there for both nights.
Wow.
Pretty awesome. He says first of all, there were 2 nights on the Saturday and the Sunday of the same weekend. The DVD seems to have come mostly from the second night. So he talks about how there were the boxes high up. And one night he said there was some disturbance in one of the boxes on the left-hand side during the show. And as he puts it, he says, it seems like some idiots who didn't know what they were buying tickets for were pissed off at hearing classical when they thought they were going to be getting Highway Star. And the manager ended up kicking them out and giving their money back, but they kind of screwed up the performance because they actually kind of ruined it. So I think that might be why they used stuff from the second night, because they made this big stink about it.
Wow.
So pretty interesting. He says he remembers Gillan introducing Steve Morris from his solo albums as Steve Morse, and then half singing something like "I never get it right" after he corrected himself. I love hearing like Ian Gillan's stage antics. He says, one last memory. I was walking. So this is interesting. I was walking out on the Sunday. You can exit straight from the boxes onto the driveway. I came across the sight of one Jimmy Page being guided to his limo, humming the riff to Smoke on the Water. So imagine that. You just leave this Deep Purple concert, you see Jimmy Page walk by going, dun, 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 dun.
That's something you don't see every day.
So he says, so if anyone tries to tell you that Page hates purple, as I've had people try to do from time to time, they're full of shit. So thank you, Steve, for writing in. That's some really great stuff. I've been in contact with several people who are now, I think they're just trying to make me feel bad. All these people are like, oh yeah, I was at the Concerto in '99. I'm like, you guys are killing me. I would love to have been there.
Hey, if anybody's been at the Concerto in '69, that would have been something.
That would have been great. Yeah. So we finished round 1 of our listener poll for Mark to try to find the favorite song from the Mark 1 lineup, and we're into round 2 now. The songs that are made it to the second round here are April, Chasing Shadows, Hush, Mandrake Root, Shield, and Wring That Neck. No huge surprises there.
Is Hush winning again?
Hush is winning, but April is giving it currently a run for its money. But I think Hush is going to win. Hush will win the whole thing.
I voted for April.
I did too. I'm pretty sure Hush will win this whole thing. Smoke 'Em on the Water will probably win the Mark II. I think it's just going to be kind of obvious who wins.
Boo, deep cuts. Come on, think outside the box.
Deep cuts, guys. I mean, by the time you're hearing this, it's Mark 1's going to be over. But yeah, come on, let's get some deep cuts. Maybe I should just leave Smoke on the Water out of the next round.
Yeah, well, you should.
And then a few days ago, I was fortunate enough to be a guest on the Paul or Nothing podcast about Paul McCartney, which was a lot of fun. We recorded an episode about the 50th anniversary edition of Abbey Road.
Ooh.
So it was a lot of fun talking with Sam about the album and about the band. He's a lot of fun, funny guy, had a great discussion. So I'm not sure when that episode will be out, probably by the time you're hearing this, but I will, of course, tweet about it. All right. With that, I saw Deep Purple.
Yeah, what else has been happening, huh?
I saw Deep Purple.
Mm-hmm.
So
why don't you tell me about it since you haven't?
You're all salty about this.
I texted you all sorts of stuff, and then you gave me nothing.
I did.
When
I
you
gave
went.
You nothing. So, well,
bastard.
So here's what happened. I went to the Rosemont Theater,
and
I went up to the will call window where my ticket was awaiting. They gave me the ticket, and I said, you know what? Thank you. I've got a record in my car. Should I bring it in now to get signed, or should I do it later? And they said, well, you don't have tickets for the meet and greet. And I was like, what? They said, you don't have tickets for the meet and greet. You just have the VIP package. And I was like, huh? And earlier in the week, I had been emailing back and forth with this woman being like, hey, I've got some merchandise to sign. What should I do? Should I bring it? And she was, oh yeah, just nothing too big. Just, don't bring a guitar or anything, but you can bring an album or whatever. And we're going back and forth. And I was like, okay, this is great.
Mhm.
Turns out I must have screwed up and I must have bought the wrong package. So I did not get to meet the band.
Oh, Nate, no.
Yeah, that's kind of sucks because I definitely would have paid the extra money to do it. But I thought I was paying the extra money, but apparently I was paying the extra money for like the merchandise package, which was fine. I got a
Uh,
poster and a T-shirt and all that sort of stuff.
What about the thing that you showed me about the meet and greet? Wasn't that from the confirmation email, or was that from something different?
I don't know how I screwed this up, but I'm sure it was my fault. So there were like all these different levels of VIP, blah blah blah. I figured if I was VIP, that I guess that all that means is I've got a the final goodbye tour coffee mug now.
Well, yeah, I know there are different tiers to it, so you probably got like
Yeah,
the basic one.
I'm a total amateur when it comes to live music, so I just probably screwed it up. So
Oh boy.
so I was kind of bummed there for a second, and Steve was waiting for me, and I saw him, so I went up to him, got to meet him, and I was still kind of reeling. So sorry, Steve, if I was a little out of it for the first few minutes there, because I was just kind of like I had this whole idea in my head of what would be going on that night, and it didn't happen. But he met me and greeted me with this amazing record journal that he made with a copy of Made in Europe. The album's just like cut out and put right onto the cover of it. Beautiful stuff. And his stuff is on nameoutofanything.com,
Nice.
alltheworldsastage.net. Those are two of his websites. He sells all these kind of customized things. So really cool. That really nice of him to bring that along for me. We had a
Cool.
great chat, kind of talking about music, obviously, before the show. We went in and both saw Joyous Wolf perform. And man, wow, that singer had put in some work.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know
he
how he
did.
was at your show, but whew.
Did he jump off the stage and run around the?
He ran around. He was
Yep.
doing backflips and front flips and cartwheels, and man, he was really working hard.
Yeah.
The rest of the band was, they were a really solid rock band. The rest of the band was really good, but he was. I mean, that guy probably slept well that night. He was. Oh my god, I was just watching him and I was exhausted. I looked over. There was like a guy, probably 20 years older than me, off to the side, just like sleeping during the set. I was definitely one of the among the younger people there. I'd say
uh,
most of the people were 10 to 20, some 30 years older.
yeah.
But there were a few younger people there too, so it was cool.
Hmm.
So that was Joyous Wolf, and then Deep Purple came. It sounds like they did the exact same set list that you saw,
Hmm.
which was great. I mean, it
Oh, no
was
complaints. Yeah.
yeah, they were so good. I was blown away. There were a few highlights for me at the end. I looked up I found a video of this, but the end of Perfect Strangers, they kind of like hit those notes like bum 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 bum, and Ian Gillan threw a like I don't want to taste its poison from Jesus
Yep.
Christ Superstar. Did he do that
Hmm.
for you?
Yeah.
And I was
I
like,
mean,
oh my god, I can't believe he did it. And then I looked it up, and apparently he's doing it all because I looked a few other shows up and I saw him doing it. So I'll put a link to one of them in the show notes. But
mm.
it was really cool that he threw that in there because I honestly thought that he sang that Jesus Christ Superstar 50 years ago and then never thought about it or heard it ever again. But apparently still does occasionally think about it.
No, yeah, that was really cool. I know he's been doing it for a while, but it's cool to still hear him do it and to have seen him do it and being such a huge fan of that musical as well. So it was just cool to see him do that.
Yeah, if I had been following the live stuff at all, maybe I would have known that. But it was kind of cool that I didn't because it just really caught me by surprise and was really cool. Another cool thing was Don Airy at one point. I can't confirm this, but at one point I could swear he worked into his keyboard solo a little bit of Mr. Crowley.
Hmm.
And
You
I
know
just
what? I think
caught a
he
couple
did.
I caught a couple bars of it and I was just like, "Oh, that's so cool."
I think he did because I remember my show. I remember remarking that to Peter.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think is that like, you know what I said. I think he threw in a little Ozzy there.
Yeah.
So like literally for like a split second. If you're a fan, you would know, but if not, you would have completely passed you by.
I
So
almost kind of caught it after the fact. I was like, "Oh, wait a second. What was that?" That was
yeah, it
really
was one of
cool.
those. Yeah. Yep.
And
Definitely.
I've got to say, I think Don Airy was the highlight for me. He was so good. His solo was so good. His whole performance was good. The band was great. I think to me, just watching how much fun they were all having, like they're all just, walking over to each other and whispering things in each other's ear and laughing, and everyone there they just seem like they're having a blast doing this, and you can understand why they're not, why retire when you're having that much fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got some good videos. I'll post a link in the show notes to some of the videos I took at the show. Definitely got some close-up videos of Ian Gillan doing the Elaine Bennis. He was doing a lot of that.
That was funny, right?
Yeah, it was great. And yeah, it was awesome. It was great. And then after the Joyous Wolf set, I went to go and chatted with Steve a little bit more, and then we both went back in for the show. And yeah, I gotta say, there was no downtime in the show. It was just wall to wall hits, great songs, great performances.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was to a T. They didn't let anything last too long. Nothing got boring at any point. It was just all great.
Yeah, that's what I liked about the show is I think I might have said in the last episode, like they don't mess around. There was like no filler, you know what I mean? They didn't uh, like talk a lot between songs. They didn't like walk off stage and let like 10 minutes go by before the encore. It's like even between bands, like there was like had to be like 10, 15 minutes. Like Joyous Wolf left,
Yeah, it was
Deep
very
Purple
quick.
immediately came on, and even their intro wasn't like that drawn out, like with um, the what
The
was it,
Mars, the Bringer of
Bringer
War.
of War. Yeah, so even that wasn't that long. So it's like they really crammed like a lot of music in there without it feeling rushed, right? And then
Yeah.
but without like screwing around too much. But it's cool.
And yeah, Ian Gillan, for
Mm.
74-year-old man who was a heavy smoker for at least 50 years.
And
I mean,
drinker.
and drinker. he can sing. Yeah, is he Ian Gillan from 1970? Of course not. But he's he's better than 90% of singers now in his mid 70s. What a performance to be able to even just to do that. And he looked great. He looked healthy. He was thin, just in shape. I mean, good for them. Good for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, 2019 Gillen sounds pretty great to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And everybody's looking really good. They're playing good. I gotta say, like him and probably Steve Morse were the highlights
yeah,
for me because like how good he was, and even though you know me, I love a good keyboard. Um, I still like I don't know. I never really listened to much Steve Morse, but I mean he's a solid player, and I love that. You know, I actually like the way he did "Smoke on the Water"
yeah,
because I was kind of interested in that. And I'm like, he played the riff just like a little different,
yeah. I was a little bit off.
and it
Not off, but a little bit different. Yeah.
but it was like, but it was kind of heavy. You know what I mean? Like different, but just different enough, I guess.
He is a truly unique guitar player. Very, I mean, I can't think of anybody that's really like him, because he's got that heavy, and but he's not like a shredder really. He's not finger tapping. Sometimes he takes the pick and goes ding, 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 on the frets. Um, but he's not really a true shredder. He has this very like very clean sort of staccato playing to his solos.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just, every time I hear him, I'm just like, this guy comes from a different world. Like I can't think of anyone else quite the same as him.
Yeah.
Jazzy, but sort of heavy and
Mm.
quasi shreddy at the same time. But he's not doing sweep arpeggios or anything like that. He's not doing anything hackneyed. He's doing his own thing.
Yeah. No, he's definitely not being a show off.
No,
So,
he seems like a very kind of humble guy. So
well, it
yeah, but
sucks. It sucks you didn't get to meet him.
it does. I was disappointed, and my wife, of course, was all over it. She's like, "Listen, they're playing tomorrow night in Minneapolis. You can leave work and you be there for the show." And I was like, "That's." I was like after how much money I just spent on this show, you want me to drive to Minneapolis tomorrow,
Oh
get a
boy.
hotel room, and pay for the same thing again? I was like, "I'll do it," but no, I was working anyway. I was working that night, but yeah, I wouldn't have done it anyway. It's about a 6-hour drive from here, so.
Ooh.
But of course, that's the last show they're playing in the U.S., perhaps ever. So I'm just holding out hope. I'm like, please have them come back in a year. I would just for one more, so I could just do this right and not screw it up this time. But at the end of the day, had a great show, great experience, no regrets.
Yeah.
It just would I wish that Roger Glover's signature was on that record, but behind me. But maybe someday. But did you see my new piece back there? The
Yeah, I
butterfly
did.
ball, my butterfly ball poster.
Yeah, where did that come from?
So it was an advertisement. It's advertising the Royal Albert Hall show in '75,
Mm-hmm.
and it was from whatever the newspaper. And I found somebody that's online on eBay that had a mint condition copy of this from the newspaper already framed.
So that is like the original.
Yep.
It's
You
not
can
like
even,
a reproduction or
when you look
anything.
really closely on it, you can see the print kind of coming through from the other side of the newspaper because it's that
Yeah.
really thin paper, but it's
Yeah.
in great condition.
No, it is. I saw the picture. I don't know if you texted it to me or you tweeted it out or something, but I did zoom in on it and look at it and everything. And my first thought was just like, oh, it's a nice reproduction because that's how good a shape it's in,
Yeah,
apparently.
it's in perfect shape. It looks like
Yeah.
it was framed the day that paper came out.
Like
Surpri-
somebody knew.
yeah.
Like
Unless it's
somebody
just
knew.
unless it's such a good reprint that I can't tell, but I can really see the ink bleeding in through the other side. But
Yeah.
who knows? At any rate, I don't even care because it was not expensive and it looks cool. So,
Yeah. That's all that matters.
so speaking of the butterfly ball, that's why we're coming here today to
Yes.
begin the process.
Oof.
I know this is like, are you
the
ready for
long
this?
the long journey.
This is a
Well,
long journey. I
well,
apologize to everybody in advance, but there's a lot to go over because there are dozens and dozens of people involved with making the butterfly
no.
ball.
I would make the argument that this is probably one of the projects that spurred us on to even like create this podcast because this is the kind of thing we're talking about, the extended Deep Purple family getting together and making something truly unique and leaving a obvious lasting impression on you, um, and me too. Like it's weird because it's after listening to the Glenn Hughes album, damn it, I started listening to it like the day after
Yeah.
and like picking off like, oh, actually this wasn't as bad, and then I got mad because I'm just like, oh, now I should have given this a higher rating. But it's like that's what happens. I haven't like pulled any of these albums out in like years, and then I listen to them, and then I become like obsessed, which is really a great thing that the show has done for me.
Yeah, and I with some of the stuff I'm not as familiar with, I've tried to give myself, like we went to Mark 1, I was like, I got to listen to these albums a few times because it'd been so long since I listened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And with every album pretty much, I've tried to listen multiple times because I think you can really get a better feeling for it if you do it multiple times. For the Butterfly Ball, I've purposely probably gone the longest I've gone since I first heard the Butterfly Ball without listening to it. It's probably been like 3 months. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
jonesing to listen to it again.
Yeah.
So, but that's an album that I could tell you every little detail, every hit of the hi-hat, every little imperfection. Like I know that album like the back of my hand, so I'm not as worried about. But I know when we talk about it, when we get to the songs, we will hear things that I had never heard before, and that's going to be cool. So the Butterfly Ball is based on a poem that was written by William Roscoe in 1802, and it was called exactly like the book. It was called The Butterfly's Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast, and it's a very weird kind of story. It tells the story of like all of the insects in the animal kingdom kind of getting ready for this ball. So here's some illustrations from the original work in the 1802. This is very, very basic stuff, these kind of stippling sort of drawings. But it gives you kind of an idea of how old this work is. It's extremely, extremely old. So he wrote this poem. It's not very long at all. And then there were 2 anonymous sequels. One was called The Peacock at Home, and the other one was called The Lion's Masquerade and the Elephant's Champette, I think it's pronounced.
What was the other one? The what is it? The second one?
The Peacock at Home and the Lion's Masquerade and the Elephant's Champette.
Roger Glover made a sequel to this. He's like The Peacock at Home. I would have been like, all right, I got to listen to that right now. What the hell is this? And it's just all music about like the peacock, like just like hanging around his house.
Well, the funny thing is they were both anonymously written and they were
Yeah.
both credited to a lady. So it was like The Peacock at Home written by a lady.
Okay.
Very weird. But they were similar. They said it looks like they were kind of more of the same, just similar things with animals having a party in the forest or whatever.
Okay.
But apparently the Peacock at Home was kind of popular in 1809. They revealed that the author was someone named Catherine Ann Dorset. And I'm going to put links to this, but you can find links to these original poems on Gutenberg. Obviously, they're all free and in the public domain. You see some of these drawings here. There's a spider, snail, all this kind of crazy stuff. So kind of funny stuff. But the book that the Butterfly Ball was based upon is a little different. Now, this book was written by William Plomer. I think I'm pronouncing his name right, William Plomer. And the illustrations, more importantly, were by Alan Aldridge. And Alan, I shouldn't say more importantly, but it's kind of the most eye-catching thing about this is the artwork. So you've got this book, they changed the name from the Butterfly's Ball to the Butterfly Ball.
I wonder why.
Don't know. But it's still called the Butterfly Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast. So you can see some of these pictures. There's Nathaniel Gnat.
No, is this from what is this from?
This is from the Alan Aldridge book. This was released in 1973.
Oh, so what, they made like an update to it?
They made an update to it. Basically, William Plomer completely rewrote the entire thing and wrote these long poems. Each page is kind of like about one set of events. There's the magician moth there. The bat. Bat is freaking scary. I used to read this book to my kids at bedtime, and some of these pages kind of scared them. They were very scared of the magician moth there because he kind of looks almost like the Grim Reaper, a cross between the Grim Reaper and Merlin.
Yeah.
Like all of these illustrations in this are kind of a little creepy and scary and a little bit psychedelic. So that's the bat. This is like the actual feast, and the feast is made to look like this weird smiling face. It's very, very trippy stuff in this book. So here's just some ideas of some of the pictures in here, and this is the actual text in the book. So there's Froggy there. Froggy is, of course, played by Ronnie James Dio in the Butterfly Ball album. But you see the picture of Froggy there. He's sitting there by some toadstools, and potentially maybe he took a bite of one and now he's tripping balls over by the pond. Because he's got this like weird glowing golden thing coming out from around his head, and it's almost like he's hallucinating all these weird scenes and like Humpty Dumpty and all these crazy things. So it's a very trippy book.
I mean, it's weird enough that he's like, basically like, like Froggy James Dio.
Froggy James Dio.
Like, I didn't even know that Ronnie was the frog. Like, even saying that is like funny.
Well, yeah, it's Froggy, and in the movie, you hear the kind of narration of some of these poems of this one in particular, leading into the play. So this one was more of a focus. So this book is mostly just everyone's preparing to go to this ball, and at the very end, they have this big ball. It sounds ridiculous, and it is. So Aldridge also did the follow-up books to this too, so it is kind of a trilogy. They made this animated short, and I guess Alan Aldridge said he came across this poem called The Butterfly Ball when he was at the British Museum, and it told the story of all the animals putting aside their differences for the day and having a party. So it's like, you know what, instead of eating you today or killing you or whatever, we're going to all party together. It's kind of a weird thing. And Alan Aldridge says, after this was at one point the best-selling children's book in the world. And previously, Alan Aldridge had been known as like writing the Beatles illustrated lyrics, which has a bunch of trippy artwork like this as well. He was known as kind of a druggy, psychedelic kind of guy. And when this came out, he's like, "Oh, Alan Aldridge, you're the children's author." It's like if there's an actor that's like been in horrible movies and then does one kids movie, and then like Arnold Schwarzenegger is in Predator and Cobra and all these movies, and does Kindergarten Cop, and they're like, "Oh, lovable Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to take my children to see his other movie, Predator." So it kind of got this, reputation as being a children's author, even though he didn't really do anything else outside of this. Mm-hmm. So Alan Aldridge thought about doing this as a movie, and he wanted music, and he first put it to Pink Floyd, and Pink Floyd turned it down. So then he said, you know what? I'm going to bring this to John Lord and have him do this, and Roger Glover will be the producer. And Roger Glover tells a story. He goes into the office, at the management office for Deep Purple. He sees this book. I guess there was a feature on it in the newspaper. He sees all of this art, and he says, wow, this is kind of cool art, and he doesn't think much about it. And then his management told him that they would like him to do it and put music to this, and he was just kind of like, why? why did they come to me? And he said his track record at this point was only being a bass player in a hard rock band, and he kind of called it like blind faith, that they put their faith into him that he could even do this. So he was given a list of albums by Alan Aldridge to listen to kind of set the mood for the kind of thing he was looking for, and Glover was set to task to recruit the musicians to start creating this thing that he had written. And that's where we're going to focus on today, the group of musicians, which is quite frankly an insane group of musicians, in a very good way, of course. Just musicians who have had these wide-ranging careers all across the spectrum. Some of them start at the Butterfly Ball. Some of it's the middle of their career. Some of them it's at the end of their career. But all of these people kind of weave together. Then all the singers kind of weave together, and we're going to kind of build in these 2 episodes the DNA behind the Butterfly Ball and what, who are all these musicians? Who are all these singers? Where are they coming from? What the heck were they doing before and after this? And we're going to listen to some of their stuff. So you ready? Do you know who's first?
I don't.
How could you? I haven't told you.
No.
All right. So the first person we're going to talk about is Les Binks, the drummer for the majority of the Butterfly Ball. So you know Les Binks, don't you?
Not personally, but no, I know Les Binks, of Les Binks. He was
of Les Binks.
Yes, of course. From Judas Priest.
Most renowned for Judas Priest, but he's done quite a few various things. The original drummer, I guess, for Judas Priest. So Les was recruited. I'm not even sure how Roger really got in touch with Les Binks, but he somehow got a hold of him for this album for whatever reason. But the thing that you'll see, kind of the core behind the band here, is the band Fancy. That's kind of the band that's backing the Butterfly Ball inexplicably. And Fancy, we've talked about before on the show. They've got a couple of tracks. This one's called Touch Me, which I think we've actually talked about the specific track before. And this was recorded by the band Fancy around the time, if not a little bit before, the Butterfly Ball, a song called Touch Me. Here we go. It starts off a little slow, of course, like the obligatory sounds of the streets and the police car siren going off in the background.
Mm-hmm.
What everyone needs to hear. And this is the band, I think, that had like the...
In the night. In the city. Alone in my room.
Fancy.
Alone.
I feel like somebody should be saying that under it.
In every song that they have, Fancy. Like, we get it. And this is the band, I think it was like the centerfold from Penthouse or something was the singer for the album, and then they just ditched her and went with somebody else for the live shows. So kind of the vocals are a little bit ridiculous, but pretty good rockin' background to it. I like the riff and the background of the song. It's a very sensual song here. That's Touch Me. And another song I think that's worth talking about is a couple years later. Oh, here, got a good little riff going on back here for the Touch Me song. good song. I think I just not sure that the singer was what this band needed.
So long.
Somebody goes, ooh, over some pretty good riffs. But anyway, that's Touch Me. They did a song a little bit later called She's Riding the Rock Machine, which is like pretty awesome. So this song came out a couple of years later. She's Riding the Rock Machine.
Oh boy.
Oh boy is right.
Oh boy. I love the cover.
Yeah, the cover is, it says fancy, and then the Y kind of loops around right around her belly button, and it's just a crotch. It's just a woman's crotch with a little bikini bottom on it. And I guess this album is called Turns You On.
Boy, they were like, I wonder if Coverdale was asked to join this band. He sounded really horny all the time.
It's kind of like the cover to, was it Amorica?
Yeah.
Except a little less graphic and just, it's like a poorly drawn cartoon.
Pretty much, yeah.
Whereas Amorica is graphic and real. It's about the most graphic photo of covered genitals that you can imagine.
I remember.
Remember
Was this just 70s jamming?
Yes. So this is the band essentially that's going to be backing up the Butterfly Ball.
I feel like Glenn Hughes would have really been into this.
So I ordered Amorica off of Columbia House back in the day,
Yeah.
and when it came in, it was a CD, and it just had the little, because if you're not familiar with the album, it is a woman. It is a woman's crotch with she's wearing a bikini that has the American flag on it, and like there's some pubic hair kind of poking out the top of it. It's very it's a little
Nasty. It's nasty.
I don't know if nasty is the right word, but it was very audacious for the time. So I had ordered it, and mine came in, and it was just a black background and a little triangle of the flag. It was like the censored version, essentially.
Oh.
And our friend Paul had the original version, and it made him really uncomfortable. So he's like, "Can I trade for your copy?" So I gave him my copy, he gave me his, and I had the graphic one, which I still have somewhere to this day.
Oh, I love it.
So anyway, that's Fancy. Fancy. The song is called "She's Riding the Rock Machine." Just a great.
It sounds like a kind of.
And
like,
the vocals, the vocals do apparently come in at the almost 3-minute mark.
Jeez.
There you go. But that's a little taste of Fancy and a little taste of the band that's going to be backing this, and a little more kid-friendly version of the of the album. So that's Les Binks. The next person up is Mike Giles, and Giles was part of the band Giles, and Fripp with his brother Peter and Robert Fripp. And they released one album called The Cheerful Insanity of Giles, and Fripp. I don't know why that amuses me so much. And they had a song, if I can find it here, a song called One in a Million, which actually I'm not even finding right now. So technical difficulties here. I'll put the link in the show notes. But the interesting thing about this band is that they were the band that eventually became King Crimson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they had the song One in a Million that will somehow get to you in the show notes. This band become. We've discussed King Crimson before. They have 21st Century Schizoid Man, but an interesting little thing. Next, we go to Jack Emblau. Now, this guy is very interesting. He played the accordion on this songs. This must have been for Harlequin Hair, which I think is the only song that has accordion in it. But this guy is a kind of a crazy accordion player. Comes off much more jazz than polka. But here's a quick little snippet of him playing his accordion. You almost can't hear the accordion with that trumpet going on too. Kind of nasty accordion player. It's like a jazz accordion thing. I think I've only really ever heard, the only thing I've really heard from accordion is kind of like polka and Weird Al.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard accordion like in a setting like this.
I like it. I'm a fan of jazz though, so I know some people just really have an aversion to it, but I've always kind of enjoyed it. He's going on his accordion solo here. And this guy was kind of a session guy, played all over the place. You can look him up on Discogs or whatever. But yeah, he's been playing it all sorts of stuff. So a little taste of the accordion behind the butterfly ball there.
Mm-hmm.
And then kicking it back while we were listening to Jack, I did get myself the Giles, Giles and Fripp, and here it is, Giles, Giles and Fripp, and this is Michael Giles, who did some of the drums on this album in Giles, Giles and Fripp, One in a Million.
He runs a little shop with a room at the top and a mortgage all around it.
This sounds like the band that would become King Crimson.
And his only son's in the Navy. But he doesn't shout about it. No, he doesn't.
This was,
shout about
I mean, the Court of the Kings and Crim was 69, so this would have been mid to later 70s.
in a million. He runs a little shop with a room at the top.
Just the look on your face.
Surrounded. He's very
So I wonder if we were rating songs, what rating would this get from you?
by the pavement. But he
I don't know, 2.
about it.
That's more generous than I thought.
Like, I mean, it's not totally unlistenable. It's just not my thing at all. It's just
No, it's that early British thing that I've talked about before. Well, I
Yeah.
went to the post shop and saw my lady, and it's very.
Yeah,
it's
no, yeah,
before
no,
they
thanks.
before it was really commonplace to not sing in a British accent.
yeah.
Before that
I
became
mean,
the accepted standard.
mhm.
So then up we get Ray Fenwick, also of Fancy and many other things, but he had a solo album before Fancy called Keep America Beautiful, Get a Haircut. And I'm gonna play a quick track from this. This was in 1970, so he was already putting a 71. I'm sorry, he was already putting out a solo album in 71. Ray Fenwick. The album cover is him on a billboard on the side of the road, big puffy afro. It says "Keep America Beautiful, Get a Haircut," and there's just soldiers running by him with guns.
But they look like hippies. They look like
Yeah, they're
soldiers.
like soldiers with like long hair,
Yeah, hippies dressed
Fu
up like
Manchus,
soldiers.
mustaches. So this is an interesting album if you're into Ray Fenwick. I kind of like it. It's definitely,
It's pretty good.
it is really good. I like, there's a lot of cool riffs. I mean, but the songs are on the longer side, but it's got a really great early 70s sound to it. Ray Fenwick is really cool. He,
This is rocking. I like this.
yeah, I'm always a huge fan of Ray Fenwick. Ray Fenwick started out in 1964 in a ska band called Ray and the Devils.
Ha, ska.
I know, he did a ska band in 64. Called them the Cherry Poppin' Fenwicks. It's a good rockin' song. He was also in a band called the Syndicates. He was in a Dutch band called T-Set. He was in Spencer Davis group. He was in all sorts of groups. So. And of course, after the Butterfly Ball also kind of became the catalyst for Ian Gillan getting his solo band back together. So Ray Fenwick was there, as well as another guy we'll talk about in a little bit. Mike Moran was there, and they were two of the first people to kind of join up for the Ian Gillan band. So it was interesting. Ray Fenwick was on John Lord's Windows, and then of course he was in Fancy. So next up, we've got a huge part of the Butterfly Ball, Eddie Hardin, who helped Glover write a few of the songs, and he was also a driving force behind a lot of different things. So Eddie Hardin, we've talked about a little bit before, and we'll probably talk in future episodes, but his early band in the early 70s was called Hardin and York, and here's a song called Drinkin' My Wine.
Sitting here drinking my wine, wasting so much of my time. Pass another empty day, sitting on my useless way. When it comes to you, I drink some out of your shoe. I don't know, but I feel like something easy might happen to me too.
I love Eddie Hardin, so I'm a big fan of Hardin and York, and his early stuff, really great. Kind of cool because he did a lot of those percussive and kind of distorted organ stuff around the same time John Lord was doing it.
When it comes to you, I drink some out of your shoe. I don't know, but I feel like something easy might happen to me.
I just like the idea of a guy that likes wine so much that he's willing to drink it out of somebody's shoe. So there's also a lot of, not a lot, but there's some violin on the album, and violin also on the live recording. And this is done by Eddie Jobson, who's a pretty well-known violin player. He was in this band called Curved Air. And here's a Curved Air song called Armin, which kind of features some of his violin playing. And this band is pretty out there. And this was 1973. And you can actually hear kind of that, you hear that slowed down violin part at Love Is All. That was played by him. And he kind of played an interesting violin, plugged in, like an electric sort of violin.
Yeah.
And he had a very kind of flowing blonde, almost mullet. He kind of looked like a buzzard. Cool looking. He looks like he's about 15 years old during the Butterfly Ball live performance.
Yeah.
So this guy must have been an incredibly talented young prodigy. Pretty rockin' band. Show you there's a lot more stuff that was going on in the early 70s than you hear in classic rock radio.
Yeah, really.
When's the last time you heard Curved Air on WZLX?
Never. So now who was the player again?
Eddie Jobson. He was in Roxy Music. He played with Zappa. I think he played with Tull, with Yes. He's been all over the place. He's a very prolific guy and younger than a lot of the people at that time. He was, so he must have been 20. He must have been 20 on the Butterfly Ball. He was born in 1955.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little taste of the violin flair that you'll be getting on the Butterfly Ball.
And I mean, you think about a lot of these young YouTube musicians that you see out there shredding it up or whatever, and then you just realize that they were young virtuosos way before that. You just didn't get to see as many of them.
Right.
But isn't it weird though to think it's wow, he was on the Butterfly Ball and he was 20 or something? It's it's nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, you can learn a lot on an instrument very quickly and become a virtuoso. Like our friend Dan, I mean, he was a virtuoso guitarist when I met him. I think he had just turned 16 when I met him.
Yeah.
And he was incredible. And
Yeah.
you know, he got better as he got older, and I played with him in bands for years. But he was already excellent when I met him at 16. You reach this point, and then your progress slows quite a bit. You get better, you get cleaner, you get more efficient. But if you reach that virtuoso status at a young age, you're great right off the bat.
Yeah.
So next up, the tabla player, which I can only assume the tabla has to be on Old Blind Mole. I think it's the only song that features tabla. But it was played by a guy named Chris Karan, and this is one of the more interesting ones, I think. Chris Karan was an Australian jazz drummer and percussionist, and he is most well known for being the drummer of the Dudley Moore Trio. And if you're wondering if it's that Dudley Moore, well, wonder no more. It is that Dudley Moore. And I always forget that Dudley Moore was like a really accomplished jazz pianist.
I think I've seen him in like one movie as like a fall down drunk, and now I just can never take him seriously again.
Yeah, Arthur.
Yeah.
You used to always, whenever we went to the video store, you'd walk by the cover for Arthur, and you do your impression of the cover with him holding a martini going.
And that's who he always will be to me.
Yeah, and that's who he'll always be to me. Anytime I see Arthur, or anytime I see Dudley Moore, that's all I think of. This is like a really weird song. He's just jamming away on the piano, singing this like kind of nonsense, like bird call sort of stuff. So even Dudley Moore is part of the Deep Purple extended family. He looks kind of like Richie Blackmore here.
He does. Well, you can tell he's having fun.
Interesting stuff. I got a couple of songs from the Dudley Moore Trio. If you're interested in hearing Dudley Moore's jazz piano work, I got you covered. But I actually really enjoy. I could listen to a whole album of that, but that's probably
That was like oddly addictive. Like
it's oddly catchy, right?
I wanted to just like
I like last time I listened to it, it was in my head for days. So Dudley Moore unfortunately couldn't make it, which would have been great if he was on the Butterfly Ball, but they have on piano, well, many piano players. But they've got John Lord, they've got Eddie Hardin. They've also got Mike Moran, who we talked about, who was in the first Ian Gillan Band album, the Child in Time album. And he worked with Queen, Ozzy, George Harrison, David Bowie. He worked on the Ziggy Stardust movie. He worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber. He played with Ted Neely.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of production. So after this, he did a couple of solo albums. In 1976, he did this called this one is called The Pickup. Covers.
Man, that is one hell of an old boat on the cover there.
Like a big old Cadillac or something on the album cover.
Oof, that's like what my grandparents drove in the 80s. Like the hood of that car is as big as my whole car.
It's as big as my living room.
It probably is.
So this gives you a little. He did another album called Keytronics, which was like a lot of him experimenting a little bit more with like synth stuff. But this is like kind of just straight up like. I don't even know what you call it. You kind of call it like it's like TV funk, like the kind of funk you'd hear in the background of an awesome show from the 70s.
Yep.
Great guitar playing. But yeah, this is another one. Like I could just listen to this whole album, start to finish.
I could just have this like on in the background while I'm like just walking around.
Yeah. Or like play it from a speaker at your hip as you're walking on the street.
Just like walking into work.
You need like some platform shoes though.
You know, with fish in them.
Exactly. So that's my little Mike Moran's work, bringing a little of the funk. You can see where some of this crazy stuff comes from.
Yeah, good funky stuff here.
One more interesting piano player here, Ann Odell. So Ann Odell was, I'm trying to find her thing here. Did I lose this one too? Well, Ann Odell is, she performed with Yvonne Elliman, also with Andrew Lloyd Webber. She worked with on John Gustafson's solo album Goose Grease, and then she she worked for a group called Sphincter Ensemble.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Which I that one to me is just I don't know. I was gonna research it, but I was like, at a certain point you gotta cut it off. You can only research so much stuff. So Sphincter Ensemble will have to be explored at another time. But I thought that was pretty great, Sphincter Ensemble.
So you don't want to explore the sphincter right now?
Not particularly. Not on this episode. So she did a solo album with like some various things. This one is from her solo album. It is called Swing Song. The album was called A Little Taste. An ice cream cone. It's like ultimate 70s stuff. 1973.
Well, I recognize the voice.
Yeah. I'm not sure how she got involved in this. That's an interesting
What was that?
It was like an extremely dramatic little drum fill. Oh, that sounds kind of comical. Yeah, the cover is her with a gigantic afro, looking sort of like what's her name from the first season of SNL?
Oh yeah, what's her name?
Not Jane Curtin, the other woman.
No, I think it was.
Oh, the one that wasn't Jane Curtin.
Gilda
Anyway, yeah.
Radner?
No, Gilda Radner, Jane Curtin, the third one. Well, at any rate, she's got a giant afro and then like a picture of like an ice cream cone. A little taste.
Looks.
I wonder if it was supposed to be called Little Taste, and they accidentally put A Little Taste in it, and she had to have the sleeves all redone. All right. There's actually a bassoon on this album. No idea where the bassoon comes in on Butterfly Ball. We'll have to be listening for the bassoon. But the bassoon was played by Robin Thompson, who was also a sax player and played the sax on this album called, or a song called Orinoco by a band called Sun Shredder. So much. This is like the ultimate deep dive episode, because before researching this, I had barely not heard of any of this.
Oh yeah.
So there is a sax solo somewhere in here. Pretty frantic drum beat. Look at that sax. Let's listen for it. There we go. It was somewhere. The drummer is insane. This might be the ultimate test for YouTube. Can YouTube identify through its algorithm all of these deep cuts?
Wow, if this gets banned, I'd be willing to see. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll
if
which
it
one
bans
of these
backwards
crazy
piano,
songs is going to be responsible for it?
well, I mean, if it banned backwards piano,
It's true. You never know. So that's Sun Treader. That is like some crazy frenetic jazz.
jeez.
So there's another guy. This was an interesting one I looked up. So there's a guy on this that plays the saw. You know, like the saw. You use a bow to play the saw.
Yeah.
So there's a guy on it that plays a saw. His name is Nigel Watson. He worked with Fleetwood Mac guitarist Peter Green, and actually passed away earlier this year in February. He did a bunch of stuff that I found from that would have been before the Butterfly Ball. All of it was, the recording of it was so bad I couldn't even believe it. It sounds like you put like a microphone inside of a shoebox that you lined with tin foil and then put it in the next building over as they were recording. It was so bad. So I found something that was much later. This is actually a much more recent work from them, but I believe it's by 2000. He worked with Dr. John, Otis Rush, and Buddy Guy in 2000, I believe, to make this. Now, let me see if we can find it here, but it's kind of a weird one. Where is it? Peter Green. Peter Green and Nigel Watson, Hot Foot Powder. It's an interesting track here. Peter Green, Nigel Watson. This is the one that's, yeah, it's got Buddy Guy, Dr. John, and Otis Rush. Kind of standard, sort of down home sound and blues. I do not believe he's playing the saw on this, though.
That'd be a welcome addition right now. Liven things up.
He's more known as a guitarist, so he's probably good playing guitar on this.
I'm a steady rolling man, and I roll both night and day.
So, very interesting album cover, just a foot that seems to be emanating either a stench or heat or maybe both.
I'm the man that rolls.
You know, some standard blues sort of stuff. So that's Nigel Watson. As we kind of round up the players here. Now, there's also not so much to play from this group, but the orchestra that was behind the Butterfly Ball that Roger Glover brought in was called the Mountain Fjord Orchestra, which was also sometimes called the Martin Ford Orchestra. So I guess Martin Ford was the guy in it. So it was sometimes called Martin Ford or Martin Fjord or Mountain Fjord. Very confusing looking this up and trying and seeing all these different entries here. So they were the string section that played on Elf's Carolina County Ball.
Mm-hmm.
They apparently only play on albums that are ball themed in title. They played on some of Elton John's works, and then David Woodcock was the guy who conducted the orchestra. Couldn't find barely any information on him, but Martin Ford worked with Ginger Baker, Elton John. He did the film Tommy, and he also worked with the Spencer Davis Group. Then he released some albums with John Gustafson. And in the 1980s, he worked with Kate Bush, Phil Collins, and Dave Davies. And then John Bell gets credit for writing and arrangements. He has a few early performance credits. The only thing that I could really find by him is that he played he had some performance credits. I believe he played clarinet on this band called Poet and the One Man Band. So something I'd never heard of. And this is them. This came out in Great intro. Like here he is, I think, believe playing the clarinet on a song called "The Days I Most Remember." Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This isn't the song he played the clarinet on. I just kind of liked this part of the song because it kind of reminds me of April.
Oh yeah.
And Albert Lee is the guitarist on this, which is why it kind of felt those Ritchie Blackmore vibes. This album is actually worth giving a listen. It's pretty interesting. He comes in a little later. Let's see, 28 minutes. He comes over around here, playing the clarinet on a song called "Good Evening, Mr. Jones." Never heard this album or this band ever. So at the very least, I think with all this, probably getting a huge playlist of things. If any of this struck you as interesting at all, there'll be tons of links in the show notes where to go to listen. You could listen to some of the stuff on YouTube. You could buy the albums, whatever it is that you want to do. But there's just so much depth to and this is just the musicians we're talking about here and all the different things that they were kind of involved with going into this. The only really last person to mention is Del Newman. He also did arrangements for the Butterfly Ball, worked with Cat Stevens, Elton John, Carly Simon, Rod Stewart, and a bunch of Hollywood films and musicals. And that's kind of the group of people as we get into this. This is why we didn't want to cram this all into one episode, because it would have been like 5 hours long. But I think this one and next week potentially will probably be somewhat shorter episodes. We're not going through full songs and doing full rankings, just trying to give you a little taste of what the DNA is behind the Butterfly Ball, because there's just so much of it. And like we've talked about before, when we talked about how Ritchie Blackmore and Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale, all these people, when they're working together, temper each other, so you're not getting like 100% pure Ritchie Blackmore or 100% pure Glenn Hughes. All of these things, all these guys that we love, sometimes when left to their own devices with no checks and balances, can go off the rails and be a little much. And when you've got these balances and somebody pushing back, and you've got somebody adding a classical element, someone adding a medieval element, someone adding a funk element, someone adding a rock element, it all melds together into one thing, rather than someone just wanting to do straight up, like we heard last week with Glenn Hughes just being Glenn Hughes. Space. And as much as I love it, it's like, we all need somebody to keep us in check a little bit. And when you hear all of these people working together, you can kind of hear this isn't an orchestra where Roger Glover handed out sheet music to everybody. Sure, he wrote the songs and everything, but you get you get the flavor of Eddie Hardin's keyboard playing, you get the style of Ronnie James Dio singing, you get the bass playing of Mo Foster, all of this sort of stuff all comes together. So, and Mo Foster was the bass player in Fancy, which we didn't really get too much into, but he does play some bass on this. And of course, as we know, he does the finger pops with those big sausage fingers we talked about many episodes ago.
Mo Sausage Fingers.
Exactly.
I forgot about him.
Mo, we need some finger snaps on this song. Bring in Mo.
Bring old Sausage Fingers in.
We know we got just the man for you to lay down some finger pops. Nobody does it like Mo.
He's legendary. He's a legend around these parts.
When you could have heard a pin drop in the studio when he was laying down those finger snap tracks. Everyone had gathered around in the control room to watch the master at work.
He just walks over. He's like, ah, that's pure Mo right there.
Pure, it's so effortless for him too.
Oh, that's so stupid, but it's so funny. Oh,
All right, so that's the yeah, that's the group of musicians behind this. Hopefully, it didn't leave anybody out, but that'll gives you a good taste.
I mean, probably like I guess we could say the group of musicians, aside from the obvious that we've already talked about ad nauseum, like all the well-known people.
Correct. Yeah. I didn't get into John Lord, and I didn't. And in the musicians or the singers section, not going to get into the background of David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes and Ronnie James Dio.
Because we already know all that.
We know all that, and even though we haven't gone to great depths about Dio on the show yet, although we probably mention him in almost every episode, it's also kind of common knowledge. If you're listening to the Deep Purple podcast, you probably know a little bit already about those backgrounds. We're going to go into the singers that you may never have heard of, or maybe not known the background of. So, so anyway, that's the part one in the bag of the Butterfly Ball. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some good information out of there. Hope some of these songs popped to you and said, wow, I'm going to go check that out, because it might not, a lot of this is not in the vein of what necessarily your traditional Deep Purple fan is into, but it might grab you if you're into some more eclectic stuff. And most of the people I was seeing at the show, at the Deep Purple show the other day, the people I was seeing, I did not think would be maybe that receptive to listening to some of the stuff.
Not these days, anyway.
But yeah, some interesting stuff. All right, anything to add about the musicians before we move on?
Nope, I'm good.
Or anything that jumped out at you? There's a lot of stuff there.
I think that some of it was more eclectic than others. I could see some of like the more traditional rock sounding stuff, or even fancy, being like somebody that likes Deep Purple, or maybe even like an offshoot of Deep Purple. Like if you like Glenn Hughes, you might like some stuff from Fancy, or some of the other stuff with the Ray Fenwick stuff sounded really cool. I mean, I think if you're into this vein of music, then you might be like, yeah, that's kind of different. I want to check that out. Or that's, like you said, you're not going to hear it on any old FM rock station or AM rock station or whatever, or you wouldn't have. So, or there's just like, I see that stuff and it just makes you realize there's just so much music.
So much. I mean, you go into any record store and just look around and just like, if you're looking at old records and just
holy cow,
who are these people? And every one of these records you picked up represents months of work and maybe a dozen people being involved in creating it at the very least, between the cover art and the production and the band and the marketing. It's incredible, and so much of it is just gone and forgotten, and it's cool to be able to dig through this. And Fancy is a band I would like to listen to more of. Hardin in York I'd listened to quite a bit years ago, but this is kind of rekindling my interest in them. Ray Fenwick, again, I've always been a huge fan. I love his stuff, and new stuff like Curved Air, and I mean, honestly, I would listen to a whole album of Dudley Moore Trio. Oops, my seat fell again. I'm having seat issues. I think it's time for a new seat. I'm gonna have to head to IKEA. If you're watching the audio of this, you'll have a nice treat.
Yeah.
Oh, ridiculous.
I'm just seeing like Nate's full head and then like just the top of his head.
Just my forehead.
As his chair just goes whoop.
Oh man.
No, that's some good stuff today.
Cool. A couple things in the news. There's an article actually reviewing the Mohegan Sun show that John attended. And it's called Goodbye, Say It Ain't So, Deep Purple. And you can check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's just talking about the Long Goodbye tour and reviewing the show and talking about some stuff. So pretty cool. I would check out that article. And then we also got in the news that Deep Purple, here it is. It's actually about a review of the show that I just went to, or I'm sorry, it was in advance of the show that I just went to, saying that they're going to be playing this up. It says, with a plethora of hits such as Smoke on the Water, Hush, and Highway Star to its credit, the band remains committed to the new music exploration. They've released 6 albums since 1996, including 2017's Infinite. And then just kind of talks about the history of the band and what they're up to and stuff like that. So put a link to that in the show notes as well. It's from the Chicago Sun-Times. And finally, to wrap it up, we've got the historical segment here on the show. And on November 10th, this show is going to come out the week of November 4th through November 10th. And the first thing up on November 10th, 1940, Screaming Lord Sutch was born. Picture of him when he was running for who knows what. You get a lot of these whack jobs in England that run for office. You ever see that guy? He's like a wizard. He's dressed as like a big wizard.
Oh.
So
no, but I guess I can believe it.
So it looks like he borrowed that hat from Richie, actually. He's got this kind of almost pilgrim hat-ish sort of thing. He's got a giant like bullhorn against his ear. It says "Vote Lord Sutch." He's got a giant pin. Here's Lord Sutch back when Richie was with him. You can see Richie.
Oh, there he is.
All the way over there on the right-hand side.
Yep,
Screaming Lord Sutch with the 50s style kind of looking hairdo. And then on interestingly enough, on November 10th as well, 1971, Ray Fenwick released Keep America Beautiful, Get a Haircut, the album that we just talked about and the song we listened to. So again, I haven't seen a lot about this album ever, but it'd be good to get into it one day. And then on November 8th, 1975, Tommy Bolin plays his first show with Deep Purple in Honolulu. And here's a little snippet from the newspapers. Deep Purple roaring with Bolin in Blackmore chair, and a little article talking about the new lineup. There's also an article on the right-hand side about the Monkees, in case you're interested.
Half the Monkees prove a major draw.
So I guess half the Monkees were playing together in 1975.
Apparently.
So that's all the news that's fit to print this week. So we wrap up our intro to the Butterfly Ball. Next week, we'll get into talking about the singers that came together. What a group of singers. If you thought the musicians were good, oh boy. We got some great singers on deck coming in for this project, and we'll be getting into them and deep diving all of their catalogs next week. So until then.
Oh, yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.